Now, broadcasting on Radio Star Worldwide, it's time for Dr. Rademakers' Prescription for Transformation. Let's tap into your own authentic genius and live the life you desire. Join Dr. Rademaker for an enlightened conversation about our brain intelligence, our body intelligence, and our energy intelligence. And now, here's your host, Dr. Bart Rademaker.
Welcome. This is Dr. Bart Rademaker, your prescription for your transformation. And I'm your show host today. And I'm very excited to be talking to you. And this is hashtag real people, hashtag real conversations. And as I keep on talking about, we live in an intelligent universe. And what that means is that things are not just happening by random. And so once you realize that, yes, we do live in an intelligent universe, then by whose prescription, by whose program are you living in that universe? To what end are you taking advantage of all the resources, of all the possibilities, of all the opportunities that are in this universe? And as we keep on talking about brain intelligence, body intelligence, and energy intelligence, and how that can fit into your future as you design your life on your purpose, on your dreams, and on your desires. And so this show is really all about what decisions are you making and how conscious are you of these decisions that you are actually making, and decisions about your personal transformation. And what does that really mean, transformation? In what direction? Transforming into something that's more generative and productive, or something that goes in the opposite direction, that's not supportive or doesn't serve you? So it really is about deciding what kind of transformation you can tap into. And so this show is really all about having those new voices, having those new opportunities, those new possibilities for your personal transformation, knowing what's out there. Because if you're not aware of what's out there, then you don't know what to do. And this is the story. This is my story of consistently being that almost this accidental tourist in my own life, bumping into new possibilities. And that's how it was in the beginning, because I didn't realize that all I needed to do was look. I needed to ask. And again, that's what this show is all about, is helping you find out. And so I'm really excited to be talking about a very special type of transformation that I've also been working with for the last 17 years. But I'm talking to an expert, and I'm very fortunate, blessed, that he is also my friend. And he's coming out with this amazing book. And this is Dr. Vern Weisberg, studied at Yale, been in practice for over 30 years, has the hugest heart and commitment to really help people with their personal transformation, dialed into their personal humanity, if you will, as to where they've lost their sense of confidence or where they want to restore their own self-esteem. And it's such a beautiful thing that he is now doing, is allowing people to really get dialed in as to how they can get the best transformation for themselves with his new bestseller that's coming out next year. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Vern Weisberg. Are you there, Vern?
I am. Thank you, Bart. That's so kind and generous of you.
And it's very accurate, too, I might add. So thank you for joining me today. And I'd like to hear a little bit about what your book is really all about. I mean, that's why I wanted you on the show, because as I mentioned, this is about transformation, and I'd like the listeners to be able to dial in how to get access to the best possible transformation for themselves when it comes to plastic surgery.
Well, Bart, as you understand, of course, because you're a plastic surgeon, for all these years, people have come to see me seeking something. And a lot of the time they think they just want an operation to change something about themselves or restore something the way it used to be, change the ravages, gaining weight or time or pregnancy, childbirth, all of the above. But the key really is, what is it that they're looking to do? And it occurred to me fairly early on that it was most important to understand not just the how-to or the what could be done, but more importantly, the why. Why are we looking to do this? What's going on for the individual? And how can I best serve them so that they get the result and the outcome that they're trying to do? So the purpose of writing this book was to be able to kind of be your best friend. So when people go out, it's a really tough world out there, and on the internet there's everything that you could possibly want to hear or read or not want to read about everybody's idea and opinion and what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and it makes it very difficult, especially for people who need a lot of information. So I thought I would want to have a trusted friend to be able to help counsel me and guide me through a decision to try to figure out how to get the best results and the outcomes that I want. And so that's my goal, is to have, because I can't be there for everybody, to have a book that serves as a resource so that even if it's not for you, you're better able to help a friend, for example, who says,
Wow.
well, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So let me ask you a question, because this is, been in practice myself for 17 years. And one of the things that I'm always confronted with, or one of the things that comes up in the conversation, or really pretty much in the entire formula, is, what is that outcome? And I'm making this assumption that most people don't really understand, unless they have their own personal experience with plastic surgery, of what that outcome really gets to achieve with people. And I'd be very curious to know, your perspective on what is that outcome, and why is that outcome so wonderful for people who undergo successful plastic surgery?
Well, really, the outcome, in my mind, the best outcome is to allow people to really express who they are inside. And there's often this disconnect as we go through life, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot, where we wind up being different people than we really are in our true nature, through time, through stories, through what we think about ourselves, what other people say about us, and so many times I come across people who seem enormously successful, and they present an issue or a question in their mind that, if you really talk to them, it comes back from something in their childhood where somebody said, something about their nose, or that, called them flat as a board, or whatever it is. And even though they're confident about many things, there is still something that holds them back, because they haven't gotten rid of that original thought. And, that may or may not be what's going on. And if it is something that's going on, and it is something that's doable, changeable, to allow them to not be concerned about somebody focusing on one area and not paying attention to them and to who they are, then, we can really, then we're able to really help with good plastic surgery. And the problem, of course, is that people think, oh, plastic surgery, that looks terrible, because everybody knows about the various people, the stars who look like somebody else, or they look horrible, or they look like a caricature. But as you know, that's really the exception.
Right. Absolutely. And I don't want to go, into any real depth in this area, but what I do experience is that a lot of people have a lot of judgment about plastic surgery and people getting plastic surgery. And it's always an interesting dynamic in the conversations that I get to have with my patients, when they also have this doubt, this uncertainty, because the environment around them is so critical of it. And so part of my job then is to help them understand, what is that ultimate outcome that they have. And what I like to add to what you just said too is what I get to experience, and I know you do as well, is that a most beautiful transformation and a sense of happiness and confidence that is really quite life-changing. And that's what gets really exciting in our profession when we get to do that. And I feel very blessed that I can help people in this manner, and I know you do too. So that leads me to the next question, and then I really want to dive into your book, shortly after the break that's going to come up. But there's a term that I've liked to use, and I've never heard it before, but I call it aesthetic integrity. And as you mentioned, there are so many people out there now performing plastic surgeries. People have so many different choices because it just seems that this market opened up pretty much for anyone who wants to promote the possibility of a cosmetic procedure. And unfortunately, some of the people are not getting the results that they want. And it really comes down to what I call aesthetic integrity, making sure that as the physician, as a plastic surgeon in our case, is that we're helping people make wise choices. And so I know you're a very wise person. And so what are some of the things that you do to help your patients make sure that they're doing the right thing for them?
Well, first of all, it's important that they understand that there are limitations to what we can do. And we certainly, if you are, 60 years old, no matter what we do, your skin is still 60-year-old skin. And so your skin isn't going to have, for example, the resilience, the bounciness, if you will, or the springiness that somebody who's 20 or even 30 has. So that even if we tighten things up in a certain position or you turn your head a certain way, you're going to have some laxity still because the skin, it's like reupholstering a couch and putting in new padding, but not changing, say, the leather or the fabric. There's still areas of wear. And there are things that we can do to address that, of course, but it's important to understand that you're not going to go from 60 to 30. You're not just,
right.
It's not going to happen. And as long as people are looking for specific things like not looking tired, not looking sad, not looking angry. I mean, I cannot tell you how many teachers I see, and that's another big myth, obviously, that everybody thinks, well, you have to be some sort of wealthy, self-indulgent person to want to have plastic surgery, and that's
right.
absolutely not true.
Right.
So most of my patients are average, hardworking people. For example, teachers who, as they're getting older, especially when they're working with younger children, the children are saying, "Oh, you look mean. Oh, she's mean. Oh, she's tired. Oh, she's sad," or people who just are absolutely, as you know, the happiest people in the world. And they walk down the street and people are going, "Hey, you should smile. Why are you so sad?" And they're not. It's just the way their face looks, and that when you can take away that initial appearance and impression that people have that you're sad or angry or tired or depressed, when of course you're none of those things, that's huge. And to be able to help people to figure out how to, what works best for them is to understand, the things they're trying to accomplish and what's realistic.
Absolutely. And I think, most people really need to appreciate what limitations really are. And what I like to do shortly after the break is get back into some of the other things that are important when it comes to this aesthetic integrity. And one thing I'd like to add right now, before we get into that break, is that more of a good thing is not necessarily better. And unfortunately, what happens sometimes is that the the physician or the person performing the procedure isn't counseling the patient well enough so that they violate, if you will, some of the normal anatomic structures or proportions, and unfortunately cause some issues with that. So right after the break, we'll go into some of the natural things that we can also do to restore form and function. I am now talking to Dr. Vern Weisberg, an amazing plastic surgeon, coming out with another amazing book of his, Face Your Future. It's your best friend guide to plastic surgery, and we'll be right back right after the break.
We'll be back with Dr. Rademacher right after these. It's people's secrets that make them interesting. People have been trusting their secrets to longtime business journalist Judy Schreiner for the last 25 years. And now you can hear them too on Radio Star Worldwide every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So have you been to the Horse and Cow yet? The Horse and Cow is a bar that caters to the submariner fleets and has been doing it for over 60 years. They've been in San Diego, San Francisco, Bremerton, and Guam. Today, they are famous for their burgers and hot wings and their signature drink, Nuke Waste. On their show, they talk with the brewing houses and distillers, liquor distributors, and patrons of the Horse and Cow. Yes, the Horse and Cow has a reputation for being an off-the-hook bar for submariners. But everyone is welcome, so pull up a chair and join the fun. And if you can't make it to the Horse and Cow Live, listen every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on Radio Star Worldwide. It's happy hour at the Horse and Cow. Welcome back to Dr. Rademacher's Prescription for Transformation. And now, once again, your host, Dr. Bart Rademacher.
Well, welcome back. This is Dr. Bart Rademacher, Prescription for Your Transformation, Real People, Real Conversations, bringing to you voices from all over the globe so that you have new choices, new opportunities for your own personal transformation. And today I'm delighted and excited and honored to have Dr. Vern Weisberg, plastic surgeon, coming out with the phenomenal book, Face Your Future. And we were just talking about, the importance of making the right choices and helping patients make the right choices and understanding limitations. And one thing I like to hear from Dr. Weisberg is that, what are some of the things that we can do naturally without surgery that can also enhance the look? Because you're talking about how people can look tired and how people, are not feeling the way that they're looking. So what are some of the non-surgical things that we can actually help our clients with? Because my personal experience, and it is a limited experience, but my personal experience is that whatever we can do non-surgically can sometimes help us maintain and sustain a longer result because of that. I'd like to hear your perspectives on that, Vern.
Well, certainly, and that's a very important aspect, and kind of goes back to what I was saying about, using reupholstering with the same fabric. And there are so many things, and nowadays we have a number of tools that we didn't have. When I first started practice, you couldn't really fill anything up or restore volume. And one of the things that we know now and really understand is that we don't just start sagging as we age. We lose volume, and that's a lot of why things drop, because the support that we have, and it's not just humans, it's certainly all mammals, we lose the thickness of our skin and the underlying tissue, what's called the subcutaneous tissue, the fat in our face and other parts of our body, in very specific and predictable areas that we know they're old. If you see a dog, you know when the dog is young and the dog is old. Same with any other animal, and certainly people. So we didn't really appreciate this when I first started practice. In the old days, all we did was pull and tug everybody, and we didn't have anything much else to do other than maybe put some chemical peel on someone. And then we started to understand about filling and trying to restore the the substance of the skin. So collagen was something that seemed to present a lot of promise. And we did that, and I certainly did a lot of collagen injections to help fill out and smooth out wrinkles. There were some issues with that, and of course it didn't last very long, and the things that we thought theoretically would work, where maybe the body would just replace the animal collagen with its own, that didn't turn out. But then we wound up with other substances that would be able to fill and restore volume, and most of that are primarily a gel-like filler, hyaluronic acid, but there are some others as well. And the other great thing, and that's something that's been around for the longest time, is our understanding of why some wrinkles occur. You know, a lot of the wrinkles occur because of the way we sleep, and certainly we spend a lot of time sleeping, and that causes some funny wrinkles in our face. And those things, you know, we can oftentimes, if we catch them early, we can fill with natural fillers, which are just injectables, pretty comfortably done, no downtime, and predictable. They last a while. Some of them last longer than others, but it allows you to maybe hold off those signs of aging or hold off that sign of being tired. But the real key is understanding that muscular action can cause wrinkling. And certainly the one that comes most to mind is around in between the eyebrows. And that's probably the first place that we started using the so-called wrinkle blocker known as Botox. And one of the big problems, of course, for people is nobody knows. Everybody thinks, well, I saw somebody look terribly, had too much Botox. Well, probably not. There are other things, and people think that Botox is going to fill their wrinkles, and it doesn't. It just prevents that movement of the muscle that causes that consistent folding and unfolding, folding and unfolding. So much like a piece of paper, if you keep folding it back and forth, you're going to have a crease. And what we found is when we stop that muscle action, the skin actually starts to restore itself, and the wrinkles somewhat tend to fill up and soften at the very least. So that works very nicely, and that's how those things work. And we can smooth out so many wrinkles. We can use that in a lot of different places, but some of them we have to be a little more careful. Botox,
right,
as you know, started off really as a treatment for children with an imbalance in the muscles of their eyes, and so it's pretty safe. People think that they're afraid of it, but it's not botulism.
Right.
And side effects from any of these things are very, very minimal and rare. And it really does, give you an opportunity to look younger, to look more refreshed, and happier and less scowly, for sure.
And so what do people tell you when they come back and they let you know, look, I look younger? What do they tell you about that?
Well, they just love it. They feel better about themselves. They don't feel that heaviness because you don't realize that the actual act of scowling, which most of us do without thinking about it, I know I do. When I see myself in videos, I'm going, dude, why are you scowling like that? You've got to stop. And by not doing that, by having those muscles not work, people actually feel better. They feel happier. Because as you know, if your state and your physiology in your body can do an awful lot to how you feel and how you feel about yourself and how you interpret the world. And if you're sitting and you're slumped and you're frowning and scratching your head, you may be concentrating, but it really seems, I think, to constrict your energy. And even if you stop and relax your shoulders, open up, and smile, it changes your physiology. So by not even frowning, even just with Botox preventing or reducing that frown, I think the physiology changes also. And people are really happy more than you would expect by just looking good. Does that make sense?
And that is so true. And so really what you're also saying, Dr. Weisberg, is that plastic surgery is a very generative, very supportive, very positive kind of experience, because when you change one thing for the better and you feel better for it, it's going to affect all parts to you. And quite frankly, in my opinion, a happier person is going to be a healthier person. And guess what? There's probably going to be less disease, less cancer, less all of that with that kind of situation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I don't think there's even the slightest doubt about that. And I know, certainly in my younger years, I was pretty doubtful about things like that. Because I was, I'm the scientist, you have to prove to me, why does this make sense? It has to make sense to me, or otherwise it's not true. And perhaps the real problem was that I didn't know enough, and I wasn't open enough. I was living inside my head rather than being perceptive of the world around me. And I know you've talked to people about this a lot, and understanding that there's far more than just the black and white.
Right.
We are not computer.
Right. And which is the reason why in the way that I approach personal transformation is all encompassing. And I'm sure there's no real scientific data to prove any of this. And it is interesting when you talk to a lot of people, they kind of scowl or criticize people having plastic surgery. And it's unfortunate because they just do not realize, what a wonderful effect it can have on people. And what's also interesting is this, and there is very clear scientific data about this, is that when women are so self-conscious, and then they have this, what they call social phobia, so that they're very worried about going out in social situations because of the way that they look. And what's really interesting, the scientific data is there to prove that, is that when we are able to change, say, one part of the discomfort or disturbance that they have, and say, for example, the main issue is small breasts. And when we go ahead and do a breast augmentation, and prior to that time, they will be very critical about all parts of their body. And interesting enough, when we fix one part, then it's almost like everything else dissolves away. All the other concerns that they once had are no longer there. And they have this then sense of freedom, sense of self-confidence, that they now can go out in the world and enjoy it. And in my opinion, that is just a wonderful gift that we are able to give to people so that they can experience life at a much higher level. And so for me personally, I feel really blessed to be able to perform these kinds of surgeries, very respectfully and properly for them, so that they are getting the true results that they're really needing to have. And any thoughts about that?
I thoroughly agree. It's really the most gratifying thing to watch somebody just blossom and open up and be able to express who they are, to be able to interact with their families in a way that they feel more comfortable, to go to the gym and not be self-conscious. And it's not just women. There are so many men who, and men are just quieter about it. We tend to hold it in. We don't emote. We don't share with our buddies. We don't go, I can't stand the fact that I look like I have breasts. So, when I go to the beach, my kid says, "Daddy, why aren't you taking off your T-shirt? Why aren't you coming into the ocean with me?" They don't tell their friends about this. They just sit there and let it fester until finally they go online and they discover that something can be done. And when you can do that and you see the look on a man's face, a dad's face, that he was finally able to go to the beach, take his shirt off, and not think about his having breasts. I mean, this is a big problem. We won't go into why I think this occurs so frequently in our nowadays, but that's a huge transformation.
And it's wonderful because it has an impact on so many different levels. And just think, these children who now get to play with their dad in a way that they couldn't do it otherwise. And it's just interesting how society just doesn't appreciate that, and how unfortunate it is that most people are not even aware of what's really, really possible. And truly, talk about men, that is one of the fastest growing areas in plastic surgery, is the male breast and reducing the breast. And it is actually a very safe procedure. This is Prescription for Your Transformation, Real People, Real Conversations. I am Dr. Bart Rademacher, plastic surgeon, talking to another phenomenal plastic surgeon, Dr. Vern Weisberg. And he is now coming out with his book, Face Your Future, Your Friend's Guide to Plastic Surgery. And we will actually dive into that right after the break.
We'll be back with Dr. Rademacher right after these. Stand Up and Speak Up with host Walt Grassel, sharing stories of people who have taken steps to overcome their fears and now lead stronger, more fulfilling lives. Are you ready to take that first step towards a different life? Join Walt as he shares his tales of triumph over stage fright and public speaking. Walt has performed stand-up comedy at the Hollywood Improv, as well as the Flamingo in Las Vegas, and wants to help you conquer whatever is holding you back. Join him and his guests for Stand Up and Speak Up, every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Radio Star Worldwide and on demand 24/7. If you are a family historian passionate about preserving and sharing family films and stories, a filmmaker wanting to move analog, legacy, or found footage into a digital project or documentary, a genealogy buff, memory keeper, or archivist, this show is for you. The Home Movie Legacy Project. Rhonda's passion for home movies and independent filmmaking stems from running Pro 8mm based in Burbank, known as the Super 8 experts for production and legacy footage for over 30 years. They have worked on thousands of projects for moguls and the masses, including Hollywood blockbusters such as Argo, Super 8, and JFK, TV shows, music videos, commercials, and the personal family film legacy of the world's most famous faces, industry icons, award-winning documentaries, and archival footage for the presidential libraries and museums. Each show will focus on compelling interviews with people who are telling their personal stories using home movies as a jumping-off point, sharing what was discovered or what was challenged or what was confirmed. Expert guests will share best practices to organize, digitize, socialize, and even monetize your old media formats, and cutting-edge ways to bring them back into your digital life. And don't miss the weekly Tech Talk segment featuring Phil Vigent, the other half of the Pro 8mm story. Learn insider industry secrets of how to become head of your own studio. Don't miss the Home Movie Legacy Project, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Radio Star Worldwide. Welcome back to Dr. Rademacher's Prescription for Transformation. And now, once again, your host, Dr. Bart Rademacher.
Welcome back. It's Dr. Bart Rademacher, your host for Prescription for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversation. And today I am with Dr. Vern Weisberg, an amazing plastic surgeon, and now coming out with a phenomenal book, Face Your Future, The Insider's Guide to Getting the Best Plastic Surgery. And I am personally very excited to be reading this book, because it's also going to help me help my clients understand how it is that they can make the right decisions for themselves. Because the way that I approach my clients, and I know that Dr. Weisberg does do the same, is really helping them understand what their choices are so that they can make the right choices for themselves. And so I'd like to invite Dr. Weisberg to share with us, what this book is really about and how it's really going to impact people in their ability to make their decisions.
Well, Bart, originally I thought it would just be a nice resource. And when I first started writing it, I looked at it and I said, well, this is kind of cut and dry. You can get information, and the key really is being able to talk to people and go through the thought process of why other people want to do something. And I like to have some stories in there to help people to understand that there are other people like themselves. Stories are either an example or a warning, and we try to not have too many warnings in this book, more as examples. And so the key is, I think, for people to understand, first of all, what's the thinking behind an operation? What's the thinking behind what the problem is? How do I understand what's right for me? And how do I understand a little bit about the history? Because there are so many things that happen, and we see what's going on now, and we think we know why those things are happening. But history is kind of nice, and I like to put a little bit of history in, and really address a lot of the questions that come up consistently, so that people are able to approach their visit or finding the right plastic surgeon for them, which I think is the real key here, in a very considered and educated way. So first of all, they can make the best use of that consultation, and really find somebody who works well with them. Because there are a lot of surgeons, as you know, who are really, really excellent technically, but may not gel. None of us is perfect for everybody, and you need to be able to understand what you're looking for, what kind of surgeon you want that's going to make you feel comfortable, and most of all, safe. I mean, safety is absolutely key. So it's good to understand who is doing plastic surgery. Who is this doctor that I'm talking to? Because people often don't know, and it's a tough world out there. As you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people who have gotten into the aesthetics or cosmetic surgery arena, and what people don't realize is that as long as you, in most states, and really most all the way around the world, as long as you have a license to practice medicine, you are not really restricted in what you say you can do or to do something. We try to help people out by saying, well, you should only go to a doctor who has admitting privileges to a hospital to do these sorts of things. But I mean, truthfully, there are wonderful dermatologists who do amazing work, and in a lot of places, dermatologists don't actually have admitting privileges. They can't go to a hospital and do an operation, and we won't go into whether I believe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think it's necessarily good, but that's not really. It's helpful, but it's not everything. So I do address the training and what goes into training a plastic surgeon, and what you would want, not just as a minimum, but to have the best quality, because, I mean, this is somebody's operating on you and making a change that hopefully is long-lasting. And, of course, every operation, and I know we've gotten away from the non-surgical things. Now, when we're talking about surgery, every operation has a potential for complication. And certainly, if you're making an incision, there's always going to be a scar. Now, as you know, we hide these scars, and that's the key to plastic surgery. We don't make invisible scars, although sometimes they're really, really hard to see, and we like that. But we orient them in places where they're not generally visible, where you have to look really hard. And we do things, and we have techniques, and we've learned how to make them as unnoticeable as possible, or to heal better. But you have to understand what who you're working with and who's going to be able to help you. And
right.
I think the other thing is that when everything goes well, almost anybody can help you.
Right.
What you want, and we don't want to think about things going poorly, but what you want is when something doesn't go so well, when there is a complication or a challenge, or something doesn't work the way you really want it to, that's where you need the wisdom and the training of somebody who really understands the whole picture and
Right.
understands you and understands, how to be able to support you through something that isn't,
Right. So
perfect.
my question then, more specifically on the book, how does the book really help people understand what it is that they need to look for? Because really, it's about getting them that information. And so I'm assuming that people we should read this book before they go to a plastic surgeon. And how do you advise them to approach either your book or the plastic surgeons that they're going to meet?
Well, I advise them to first of all read, and I've divided it into chapters, obviously, about certain areas and things that people might be interested in. The things that are most popular, and some things that are newer. Obviously, techniques and theories and processes are consistently and constantly changing. And the book comes out in March, and I'm sure that by next March there'll be things that are either inaccurate or newer or what have you. But in terms of to the best of my current knowledge, the book helps people by, first of all, giving them the basic education about what is a procedure, what can it do, what is the problem, what does it come from, so you better understand why things are the way they are, and what sorts of questions to ask whoever it is that you want to talk to about getting something done. So how do you not sit there and be nervous and forget everything that's talked about? How do you prepare yourself so that you're calm and able to ask the right questions and hear the answers rather than worrying about being in a room with a doctor? And for some people, that's a really overwhelming concern, because a lot of people, for some reason...
So basically what you're saying too, and this is so true, is really knowing what questions to ask. And oftentimes I find that people aren't asking the questions and don't have a clue, what it is that they don't know. And in addition to that, it's also about the wrong assumptions, or the assumptions that they're making. And right before we go into this break, I'd like to hear from you some of the assumptions you think that people are making that actually aren't going to help them.
Okay. So there are a lot of assumptions that people make. First assumption is that it's going to be painful. And that really, there are certain, obviously there are some operations that are going to be painful, and nobody is, pain is in many respects subjective. And while most of the things that we do are very comfortable post-operatively and certainly during surgery, there are people who are going to have pain or perceive pain more strongly and are more sensitive to that than others. One of the big things that people are concerned about is recovery, and that they're going to look horrible, or they're going to be bruised and swollen and misshapen, and
right.
Those are issues that really, I know in my practice, and probably in yours, and a lot of the great surgeons that I know, that isn't the case. That's not how things go.
So one thing, if I'm going to jump in, and we're going to take a break real quick, but I just want to add too, and get your perspective on this real briefly, is that one of the assumptions I think a lot of people make is that they go price shopping, and so they pick a lower price, thinking they're going to get the same result. And I relate it to, when you go to Macy's and you buy a brand pair of shoes that cost X number of dollars. Yes, you can go to Ross for less and get the same, but for a lot less. And I think there's a misconception that when you go to the well-qualified plastic surgeons who say charge $10,000 or $15,000 for a procedure, and you can get the same procedure somewhere else. And I see that as a big problem. And actually, what we'll do right now, we'll go into a quick break. This is Dr. Bart Rademacher, Prescription for Your Transformation, Real People, Real Conversations, talking to Dr. Vern Weisberg. He's coming out with his book, Face Your Future, Insider's Guide to the Best Plastic Surgery, and we will be right back.
We'll be back with Dr. Rademacher right after these. Do you like the rock and roll way of doing things? How would you like to learn how to apply them to your business? Then tune in to the Tim Gillette Radio Show every Tuesday on Radio Star Worldwide. Tim Gillette is the creator of Rock and Roll Keys to Business Success, using music, motorcycles, and mentorship to teach entrepreneurs to become leaders in their industry. Join Tim and his guest every Tuesday at high noon Eastern on Radio Star Worldwide. Ask Roxy how to lead like it matters every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Roxy Hewitson is the Dear Abby of practical leadership advice. Whether you're a manager, an executive, or a CEO, running a large global firm, or a small business, or even just focusing on your life and family, join us on Ask Roxy. If leading other people or working with your boss is sometimes difficult for you, and there are challenges you aren't sure how to address, tune into Ask Roxy. Roxy's been there, from the front lines to the C-suite, as a leader, coach, teacher, and author. Her highly acclaimed new book, Lead Like It Matters, Because It Does, is a handbook, playbook, and workbook of must-dos, nice-to-dos, and really don't-dos of being an effective leader. Give yourself a boost this week with powerful advice that could actually change your life. Join Roxy and her guests and call in with your questions every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on Radio Star Worldwide and on demand 24/7. Welcome back to Dr. Rademacher's Prescription for Transformation. And now, once again, your host, Dr. Bart Rademacher.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Bart Rademacher, Prescription for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversations. And I am talking to Dr. Vern Weisberg, an awesome plastic surgeon coming out with his book, Face Your Future, Insider's Guide to the Best Possible Plastic Surgery. And we just, right before the break, we were talking about some of the assumptions that people make. And I think one of the most fatal assumption that people make is thinking that a cheaper price is going to give them the same results. And it's quite incredible how in my practice here in Florida that I would easily say that 80% of the people that are coming to me are price shopping. And I just like a few comments from you, Dr. Weisberg. What's your experience?
Well, that always fascinates me because there's an assumption, and certainly we certainly have in the way we view medicine in our country and in the world. Certainly, insurance companies think that a doctor is a doctor, and so they negotiate for. They don't go and say, "Well, who's the best doctor?" and let's have that person in our network. Although they'd like their clients to know that, they go, "Who can we get for less? Who's the cheapest?" And and so people start to think of that in terms of commodity. All training is not the same. A doctor is not a doctor. A plastic surgeon is not a plastic surgeon. I mean, there are plastic surgeons that I would trust my dearest friends and family to, and there are plastic surgeons that, frankly, I really wouldn't want to see them operating on anybody that I knew. And, and so there, it's hard for people to understand this. But, for example, price. There was a gentleman several years ago who had come to see me about some issues with the appearance of his nose. And we talked about it, and I mean, personally, my training, my background, I started before plastic surgery. I did training in ear, nose, and throat, so I feel pretty comfortable with noses. And I made a recommendation, and he really liked what I had to say, but somebody else said they could do it cheaper, which, I mean, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Everybody's able to make their decisions. But then the gentleman came back to see me about a year later, having had the original surgery and then a revisional surgery, and just, feeling like he had not gotten what he was trying to do and had issues. And then I was in a position of having to try to fix it. And, and he said, I felt great about you. I knew that you were the right person, but I just, I felt like the other doctor would probably be able to do a pretty good job, and it would cost me less. And ultimately, it, didn't cost less, because he wound up having additional surgeries. And also never really quite got what he had hoped for, because, as you know, the best chance is the first surgery. And each subsequent surgery, it's harder to get where you want to go. So, I mean, that's an example.
Right.
And, there are, one of the big problems that I see are so many young women actually fly to Florida. And there are places, as you know, where it's really like a production line.
Yeah, it is.
And it's banged out, and they do have pain, and but they figure it's worth it in some fashion. And also I know a lot of people who fly to Central America or South America because it can be done really cheaply, and I don't even know how they can do it at those prices, but they do, and then they come home and they don't always have problems, but that's what I see is when people have problems. I don't see when people do well, because obviously they don't come in and go, hey, look what I did. Doesn't this look good? They come in and say, I have this issue here, and I had my surgery done in Costa Rica, or I had my surgery done in Bolivia, and here's the problem. And we fix this.
And it is unfortunate that does happen, and that's where I come back to, aesthetic integrity. And I talked to an attorney friend of mine once, and I said to him, look, if I can't compete in this environment with integrity, then it's time to go out. And we're getting very, very close to that space. And it is unfortunate. And I know that the whole landscape for plastic surgery has changed in that respect. And hopefully what will happen with individuals like yourself and myself who are really looking towards being much more positive, much more generative, much more in the right space and safety, that people will have more of that awareness. And for me, that's also part of the reason for the show, not just for plastic surgery, but for anything, is really allowing people to hear the truth about what is going on. And so, and with the truth too, and if we flip it to great stories, you share with me one story, and then I'd like to share a great story that I have of really wonderful outcomes. I would love to end up, on that note, with you today.
Okay. So interestingly, I mean, there are all kinds of wonderful outcomes. There's, I can think of a woman who, had a trauma to her nose when she was young, and she just had no bridge to her nose. She had what's called a saddle nose deformity, and she looked like a boxer, and by doing a surgery and doing a bone graft, that's more than people probably want to know, but by being able to to correct this, she then was able to be the feminine woman that she always was, but people just thought that she was harsh. And, I wound up seeing her, say, 20 years later, and she still looked great, and she was just so thankful. And, it completely changed her life. And certainly another consideration is, where I've seen people who have gone through breast cancer surgery and have had attempts at reconstruction, where what they had hoped to have happen didn't, or they were in pain, or they had complications, and just being able to help somebody who felt like they had wound up deformed, and to be able to recreate and give them a sense of wholeness of themselves and restoration. And I'm really thinking about one specific person. Well, there are several, but one comes to mind. She not only wrote this huge letter about how it changed her life, going from basically suffering, to having to being just grateful and feeling feminine again, and not being in pain, and not being anxious about what had gone on, and being reminded about her cancer. So,
and I think that's one of the huge things. I think that's one of the huge things with reconstructive surgery for the breast, is that women, you're restoring their own identity, their own femininity, their own place in this world, which in modern media, culture, whatever you want to call it, there's so much emphasis about, masculinity and femininity, that this becomes even more relevant today. And one of my favorite stories is, it was very early on in my career. I think it was within my first year. No, actually, it was within my second year. And this sweet lady, and I call her the Flying Nun, in Ireland, and there's a reason for that. And she came to me and she said, "Look, I want a breast reduction." I says, "Okay, we'll do that. I'm good at that. I can do that." And I says, "Well, great. I need it, next week, because I'm going to Ireland next month." And, I was at that time still very inexperienced and very cautious. And I said, "Well, I can't do it. It's just not time enough for you to recover." I says, "Well, no, but you're going to have to do it, because I want to go to Ireland." And so after enough arm wrestling, she did convince me. And I did tell her all the limitations and concerns and the possibilities and everything else. And very successful surgery. And the best part is that when she came back, and she was absolutely delighted, because she said to me, and she was about 70 years old, she said to me, "You know what? I felt all this weight gone. I felt like I was flying all the way through Ireland. And it was such a beautiful experience, because I wasn't tired. I had so much energy, and I really want to thank you so much. And I just don't understand why I didn't do it, 30 years later." So I want to wrap it up with you, Dr. Weisberg. This has been a great talk. It's real people, real conversations, new voices, prescription for your transformation. Dr. Weisberg is coming out with his book, The Face Your Future Insider's Guide to the Best Plastic Surgery. It's a phenomenal book. Dr. Weisberg is a phenomenal human being. I know him very well. He's got a huge heart, going through tremendous transformations all the time, helping people get what it is that they want. And that's what he and I are very passionate about. That's also why I came out with my book, 52-Week Success Plan, Life-Changing Principles to Greater Wealth, Health, and Happiness in 5 Easy Minutes. So I'd like to thank you, Vern, for today. This is Prescription for Your Transformation.
Thanks for listening to Dr. Rademaker's Prescription for Transformation. Join Dr. Barton Rademaker live right here on Radio Star Worldwide each week, or on demand 24/7.